With only a few days left in the 2019 legislative session, issues are beginning to heat up. The paid family leave bill was pulled by its sponsors this week, a bill that would eliminate cash bail for low-level crimes, and a bill that would fund full-day kindergarten using marijuana tax money all remain in flux. Meanwhile, Governor Jared Polis has proposed a new bill that would create a tax on vaping products and increase taxes on all nicotine products. Natasha, the end of any legislative session is usually a piranha tsunami. It's our internal phrase for something bigger than a Sharknado. But this one seems even crazier. What do you think of all the crazy issues we're seeing this week?
I think exactly that. We maybe need an earthquake scale of the Sharknado situation. I think, it's a little premature to start being retrospective on the session, but I'm going to do it anyways because I was thinking about last session, which was characterized by so much inaction, so many stalls, so many stalemates happening. And we've seen with this session almost the exact opposite, a sense of maybe things are moving too fast. That's certainly something the Republicans have raised again and again. But now that we're down to the final days, we're really seeing a push for the issues that they want to finish up, to sort of dot the I and cross the T on before the end of the year. One of those that went through that you mentioned was the eliminating the cash bail for low-level offenses. That was something that was sponsored, actually had bipartisan support, but I'm going to specifically call out Leslie Herrod's work on that. She has been a big advocate on the Capitol for criminal justice reform in many different ways. In addition to that, community activist Elizabeth Epps was really influential in getting that signed in by the governor just yesterday. That's something that can have an impact on our community literally today. It's something that's effective immediately. It could potentially decrease populations in jails. There's just all kinds of benefits that may trickle down from this, and I think it's a good example of where lawmaking, bipartisan lawmaking, can be really successful.
Ed, as we said in the open, you are our guy at the Capitol. What do our viewers need to know about what's happening in this last week of the session?
Well, there's going to be a lot of debates over very serious, complex topics that are going to happen very, very quickly in a way that doesn't honor the complexity of the bills that are coming up. I think we saw that, particularly the one I want to single out here, is the paid family leave bill, which got bumped back to being a study. Actually, I shouldn't say study. The sponsors would kill me. They've asked me not to use that word. It's an implementation plan that doesn't actually allow for implementation of this bill unless another bill passes. But it kind of shows how ideas that can be so favorable, especially to the party in power, don't translate easily into policy. This is something the Democrats have wanted to do since 2014. It's failed 4 times in the past 5 years. It seemed like they took back power and that paid family leave was going to go into play. But there were too many questions that came up about, was this program fiscally solvent? There was so much of a business backlash that I don't think there was, the Democrats are ready for this. I mean, people like Senator Pete Lee of Colorado Springs, not a guy who's a swing vote most of the time, really started questioning this because he heard so much from people within his district. And as such, they're going to have to take another year to look at this and come up with a plan that they can convince skeptical Democrats to get behind before moving forward. It just shows that even when you have the power at the Capitol, it doesn't give you carte blanche to go forward with big picture ideas unless you can put them into paper. And I think we're going to see a number of bills die in the coming days as well. I'll tell you one, for example, the one that would allow cities and counties to enact rent control because those big picture ideas don't translate into the policy. Watch for a lot of that over the last week.
Eric, what do you think of this we've seen a lot of last week of the sessions around here. From what you're seeing here, do we see anything that we're going to be talking about a few weeks from now?
Sure, it'll be part of the retrospective a week or 2 weeks down the road. I mean, to some of Ed's points, politics is politics, but every once in a while, economics needs to intrude, as it does in the rent control debate, where some things are politically popular and just economically completely I've sometimes described, and we've talked around this table, Dominic, that this was a session that for many years when the Democrats were in control, they would settle for half a loaf because they were always nervous about the next election down the road. It was this session where it felt like they were going for the full loaf. And I think what we're seeing in the closing days or closing weeks is there's still a few slices that they're going to leave, a few slices of bread they're going to leave in the package and maybe or maybe not deal with next year. The family leave bill, a couple others as well. The one that I noted this week was Governor Polis and others endorsing a ballot issue, which I think they're going to have the legislature refer and put on the ballot. So that is going to be a big issue, presumably, that we'll be voting on this fall, Ed, for the 2019 election, the vape tax, cigarette tax increase. In years gone by, I mean, my old firm did the only cigarette tax, the only major statewide tax increase to pass in this state since Tabor. That was back in 2004. There was a much more recent one, I believe 2016, that failed because the industry, the tobacco industry and allied interests went hard at it. I think they learned in that one that you can shoot these things down with an aggressive campaign. Polis is investing a lot early in his tenure on this notion of another sin tax increase to pay for pet democratic programs, including education.
Susan, there's a lot of topics in the last week of any session, but especially this one. Take your pick. What do we need to be paying attention to during these last 7 days?
I think it's going to go by so quickly, there's not really enough time to pay any attention to much. And I think that's actually a problem in the way that the session has been scheduled. I think there are a lot of complaints that important bills have been back-ended and will not be given justice. I think probably with a week or so left, it might be too early to talk about the story, the overarching story of this session. But I think one of them for sure is what's going on in the with the Senate Democrats. What happened with family leave is very much, as my colleague Alex Burness points out, similar to what happened with the death penalty repeal, where you had 3 or 4 Democratic holdouts. These were bills that were expected to slide in. Death penalty repeal had the support of the governor. Family leave, he was trying to sort of broker some sort of win-win situation. But I think in both of those cases, with these Democrats who have been wanting to take back that chamber for so long, these are core Democratic values. Repealing the death penalty, paid family leave. I think there was just, and Ed sort of alluded to it, a basic expectation that because they're in power, these things will happen. And I think there have been some complaints about, or concerns about, the way Roy Garcia has been leading as Senate president over there, and sort of doing this like live and let live, you all can have your fights and I'm not going to intercede. But there's an argument to be made if you're a Democrat, really, and Republicans did it beautifully when they were in the Senate, to really organize your people before a vote. It's not a big shock, for example, that family leave has major economic downsides.